We fly direct from Heathrow to Delhi. For the first 2 weeks we're on a guided tour, 27 of us in all, of Delhi, Agra and on to Rajasthan. We start with the sights of New Delhi. I'm not bandaged, but am wearing a shawl. At most temples you have to remove your shoes, but here, in addition, your head should be covered. Sikhs believe that a dip in the Saravar will wash the soul, and drinking its water will heal the body. I don't know who he is, but this is our tour guide, Abby. The India Gate, inspired by the Arc de Triomphe, is at the centre of Lachin's New Delhi, purpose-built as the capital of India. The nearby stone canopy originally held a statue of King George V, now banished to a park on the fringes of Delhi. The India Gate is now the National War Memorial with an eternal flame, and beyond it, almost lost in the mist and smog, is the President's, formerly the Viceroy's, residence. Here's what it would look like if we could but see it, the largest such residence in the world. The Indian railway system was originally developed by the British starting in 1853. It's now the fourth largest in the world after the USA, Russia and China, one of the few undisputed benefits we brought to India. We're shown a refuge for street children. Delhi has all too many who are exploited and abused. For the children, it's a day off from school and they're watching TV, but they let us interrupt this. The theme of the tour is to learn something about the Mughal Empire, the Muslim emperors who ruled Hindu North India, and at times much more than that, from 1526 to 1857, leaving an astonishing legacy of palaces, mosques, mausoleums and forts, all so far unseen, but that's about to change. First, however, a little history. The first emperor, Babur, a descendant of Genghis Khan, came from Central Asia. He was a diarist and lover of gardens, but most of his time was spent fighting, none too successfully, in Central Asia, so he invaded North India and founded his empire there, with Agra as his capital. The second emperor was Humayun, the eldest of Babur's sons. He lost the empire, but managed to win it back, best known for his tomb. Akbar was the greatest of the Mughal emperors. He made massive conquests, was tolerant of other religions, abolished slavery, encouraged the arts, and governed efficiently. By and large, Jahangir followed in his father's footsteps, but he was too fond of wine and opium, and when under the influence, his favourite wife ran the empire. Shah Jahan was the great Mughal builder of the Taj Mahal and much more. He moved the capital from Agra to Delhi in 1638. 20 years later, he made the mistake of falling ill and was deposed by his third son, Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb was a religious zealot. He introduced Sharia law, destroyed Hindu temples, brought in public executions, and banned music. Although he managed to hang on to the empire, it was no longer a harmonious one. After Aurangzeb, there were no emperors of consequence. The empire went into a steep decline, and the last emperor, Zafar II, lost what little power he had when exiled by the British in 1857. Old Delhi, which is not in fact the oldest part of Delhi, was founded as Shah Jahanabad by Emperor Shah Jahan in 1638. And Shah Jahan built the Red Fort as his seat of power, primarily a fort but also a palace, but sadly knocked about not least by the British in 1857 in the aftermath of what used to be called the Indian Mutiny, now called the Uprising. Within the Red Fort, only about 1/5 of the original buildings remain on view, and they are stripped of all contents. The Qutb complex is on the southwest fringes of Delhi. It has the earliest Muslim monuments in India, 300 years before the Mughals, which are built over a yet earlier site of Hindu and Jain temples. This tower was planned to be twice the height of Qutb Minar, but wisely abandoned. So far as I know, the only Holy Family where one son has 6 heads, the other an elephant's head. after 3 nights in Delhi, on to Agra, by train for the experience, and it's 2 hours on the train against 5 by bus. Somehow we all get out at the right station, Agra, Kent. The Taj Mahal is a mausoleum built by Emperor Shah Jahan in memory of his favourite wife, Mumtaz Mahal. She died in 1631, soon after giving birth to their 14th child. Construction began in 1632, with 20,000 men working on the site. It's built of white marble. Coloured marbles and gemstones are used in the decorations. The cenotaph of Mumtaz Mahal is in the centre of the chamber, inlaid with precious and semi-precious stones. Shah Jahan's cenotaph is on the left. The actual tombs are on a lower floor.
But way back in 16th century, there was no other king in the world, in the known world, who used to write, of course, a personal diary. And that autobiography of Babur, called Babur Nama, is a valuable source of dates and facts of that period, not only of his homeland in Central Asia or Kabul, but also of India of that time, how people lived, what they used to eat, what was the general, of course, physical features. So it's a valuable source of information. So a highly scholarly person, but did not have, as I said, any particular interest in architecture. He was more fond of gardening, and that is why he laid gardens. And according to his last wish, after his death, his body was carried from Agra and it was laid in a garden that he himself had designed on the banks of the river in Kabul, on the slopes of a low hill near the river, with a marble enclosure around the grave and open to sky, no mausoleum, no tomb constructed. His son, then successor, Humayun, was also a very scholarly person. He used to collect books, hand-painted books, handwritten books, and had a keen interest in astronomy. But he became so superstitious that he would not, of course, take any decision, political decisions, undertake any journey without consulting his astrologer. Ruled for a very brief period, 18 years, and had this very freakish accident. He was climbing down the staircase, fell and succumbed to the injuries. And a grand mausoleum was commissioned in Delhi, the Garden Tomb, Humayun's tomb, the precursor of Taj Mahal. His eldest son, Akbar, at the age of 13, after this sudden tragic demise of Humayun, was crowned as the third Mughal emperor at the age of 13, placed under the regency of his uncle for first 6 years. When he turned 19, he took the powers, the reins of the empire in his own hands and launched a series of military campaigns. against the immediate neighbors, which included Hindus also. He married Hindu princesses from different parts of India, particularly northwest India. The first, of course, Mughal emperor who married Hindu princess was this man, the third Emperor Akbar.
It was Emperor Akbar who founded Agra Fort on the remains of earlier Hindu fortifications. It became as much a palace as a fort. Most of what you now see was built by his grandson Shah Jahan. The ramparts are the work of Aurangzeb. It is from here that the Mughal Empire was governed until 1638. This two-storey pavilion with distant view of Taj Mahal is said to be where Shah Jahan was imprisoned for the last 8 years of his life after being deposed by his son Aurangzeb. Time to move on, this time and from now on by bus. The next hotel claims to be in Jaipur, though in fact it's somewhere to the north of Amer. No matter, the plan is to see Amer and Jaipur tomorrow. And today we'll stop to see Fatehpur Sikri on the way. Drums would have been beaten for royal and other important arrivals. Fatehpur Sikri was built by Emperor Akbar, intended to be his capital, from around 1570 to 1585, but no sooner finished than abandoned. So today it's a ghost town apart from the tourists. There are conflicting theories about why it was abandoned. Pachisi is a board game vaguely like Ludo, a game which Akbar would have played here using dancing girls as life-size pieces. In its heyday, the Zenana would have held around 5,000 women, guarded by a legion of eunuchs. Alternatively spelt with a B, but however spelt, usually pronounced Amer.
Tourists get to the fort by elephant, or by walking up, or as I'm sorry to say we did, by jeep. Amer Fort was built on the site of earlier forts by Raja Man Singh from 1592. Man Singh was a Hindu, a Rajput of the Kachwaha clan, but he was also an ally of the Mughals, holding important posts in Akbar's army and government. So the fort, which is also a palace, combines Hindu as well as Muslim elements. Amer was the capital of the Kachwaha clan until 1727, when Jaipur became the capital. In the afternoon, off to the city palace in Jaipur. You will probably work out why Jaipur is known as the Pink City, well, shades of pinkish. It was in 1727 that Samai Jai Singh II, the head of the Rajput Kachwaha clan at the time, and self-elevated to Maharaja, moved his capital from Amer to Jaipur. Raja, by the way, means king, and Maharaja, great king, not a lot of difference really. The Jaipur city palace, still the seat of the Maharaja of Jaipur, is in the centre of the city, within the city walls. It was built between 1729 and 1732, but with many later rebuildings and additions. It manages to combine Hindu, Muslim and European elements. These huge silver jars are intended to hold sacred Ganges water. The Maharaja at the time took them with him to the coronation of Edward VII, not trusting London water. Note how everyone walks on the road. Pavements are usually impassable. The Palace of the Winds was built so that the Maharaja's wives and concubines, kept indoors in strict purdah, could see what was going on in the street below without being seen themselves. Though tall, it's a very thin building, mostly only one room deep. There are 953 latticed windows, perhaps a clue to how many wives and concubines there were. It's the next morning, still at the same hotel, and a day off. I decide on a walk. Once out of the hotel, I'm in an industrial development area, bursting into life with new technical colleges. Then, suddenly, in an area with a few scattered houses and small farms. Then in the open countryside, or semi-desert. And there's a hill with a stone staircase leading up it. At the top of the staircase, the path peters out, and I never do get to see the ruined temple at the top of the hill, but there is a view. Today, on to Jodhpur, a bit over 200 miles. It's a long drive and the landscape gets progressively drier. But there's a welcome lunch stop at Nimaj. We walk up the narrow main street of this village. And find ourselves in a modest-sized palace, now the Nimaj Palace Hotel. Jodhpur is known as the Blue City. Blue is the colour of the Brahmin caste, the highest of the Hindu castes. Initially, it was Brahmins who painted their houses blue. Later, others joined in. It's the next morning and we're to see Jodhpur and its fort. Jodhpur was the capital of the Marwar kingdom, ruled by another Rajput clan, the Rathores. The Mughal Emperor Akbar captured the city in 1561, but, you've already guessed, he then married a Rathore princess and turned the defeated ruler into an ally. The huge fortress, rising high above the city of Jodhpur, is the Mauranga Fort and dates from 1459. Before the fort could be built on what had been known as the Mountain of Birds, its only inhabitant, a hermit living in a cave, had to be displaced and appeased. This is his shrine, tomb and simulated cave. When a ruler died, his wives and concubines were expected to throw themselves on his funeral pyre. These handprints, originally marked by henna-dyed hands, later outlined by a stonemason, are of the 31 wives and concubines of Maharaja Man Singh, who threw themselves on his funeral pyre in 1843, a custom called sati or suti. After a very late lunch, a 50-mile round trip of outlying villages by jeep.
First, of course, you have to sit like this for hours. You are on the spot. There are no schools. He has learnt it from his father.
Bishnois are an environmentalist sect. The men wear white turbans and white robes. I think we were being offered opium. Back in the bus. Today we move on to Udaipur, exchanging the semi-desert of Jodhpur for the wooded Aravalli Hills with a stop at Ranakpur on the way. There are 4 Jain temples on this site, tucked away in a wooded valley in the Aravalli Hills, but this is much the largest. Built of white marble, completed in 1458. The first principle of the Jain religion is to avoid harm to all other living beings, which goes all the way down to ants. There are other principles, all worthy, but not so remarkable, such as always telling the truth and being detached from material things. I came across this broom lying by the path. Could it be for sweeping the path of ants, to be sure of not stepping on them? We're now at Udaipur in what was the kingdom of Mewar, not to be confused with Marwar, the kingdom where Jodhpur is. The ruler of Mewar had the title Rana, or later Maharana. A Rana is a king proved in battle, one up on the Raja, and a Maharana is similarly one up on a Maharaja, and certainly not a female Maharaja. The Mewar capital was moved to Udaipur after the Mughal Emperor Akbar had captured the former capital Chittorgarh in 1568. Quite grandiose, with food to match. It's the next morning, and we're off to see the city palace built on the shores of Lake Pichola. It's a massive agglomeration of 11 palaces, built by different Maharanas over a period of 300 years from 1599. Once inside, it's a maze of narrow staircases, small courtyards, small rooms. I'm not going to try to disentangle it. This must be, on the left, the flight into Egypt, not what you'd expect to find in a Hindu palace. Today we're to see Chittorgarh, 70 miles away. Abby finds us a car and driver, and a local guide who we will pick up when we get there. No one else on the tour opted to go. We zigzag up the hill to Chittorgarh Fort through 7 gates. Chittorgarh Fort is on a steep hill 180 metres above the town and more than 3 miles from end to end. It's the largest fort in India, with a history going back at least as far as the 7th century. Although it looks impregnable, it isn't. Between the 14th and 16th centuries, it fell 3 times to Muslim invaders in 1303, 1535 and 1568. Each time, at the point where defeat was imminent and inevitable, thousands of women would commit jauhar, throwing themselves and their children onto a funeral pyre, and the men, wearing saffron robes, would charge out against their attackers, facing certain death. After the last of these catastrophes, the fort was abandoned. This was built by Rana Kumbha to commemorate his 1440 victory over the Muslims. There's a dark, narrow staircase inside the tower and of course sculptures. We went up to the second floor for the lions and the view. Padmini was the queen of Chittorgarh and had matchless beauty. In 1303, the Muslim Sultan of Delhi, having heard of her beauty, decided to possess her. So he took his army to Chittorgarh and besieged it. He then struck a deal, agreeing that if he was allowed not to see her, but merely to see the reflection of her face in the pool of this palace, that would be enough, and he would return to Delhi. But of course he didn't. The fall and destruction of Chittorgarh became inevitable, and to avoid dishonour, Queen Padmini led the first of the terrible Jauhars. It's the end of the 2-week tour. We say goodbye to Abbe, a guide absolutely without equal, to most of the group, to our reliable driver, and to the assistant, who must have assisted well. There were no problems. We fly from Udaipur to Mumbai, change planes, then fly on to Goa. Mumbai Airport has glass sin bins for smokers. The red flags seem to be overcautious. I swam in the sea every day. We're now as far south along the beach as you can get, with a river ahead of us. A 13-mile round trip from the hotel. We're in Goa to recover from sightseeing, not to do more of it. However, we couldn't come here and not learn something about Goa's past. Goa was ruled by Portugal for 450 years until 1961. Today we're to see Old Goa, the Portuguese capital from the 16th century until the 1750s, when it was stricken by plague and abandoned. There's nothing there now except churches, enormous churches. This church has lost a tower, which collapsed in 1773 and was never replaced. There's something rather strange about the tree, too. We're also to see an old Portuguese quarter of today's capital of Goa, which is officially called Panaji, but according to our guide, invariably known as Panjim.